All right, so let's take a look at the last section in this chapter, which is all about communication in romantic relationships. And we're going to look at, first of all, the components, and then we're going to look at how love is expressed in romantic relationships. And I'm going to try to minimize this thing. Okay. I don't know why this thing always pops up. Okay. Okay, next one. Okay, so Robert Sternberg has what he calls the triangular theory of love, and says that there are three components to love: intimacy, passion, and commitment. Intimacy is when you like someone, you like spending time with someone, and this is what Sternberg refers to as the warm component. Passion is the infatuation, the physical attraction. As the textbook says, this is what is frequently shown in movies. And this is what Sternberg calls the hot component of love. And then the third one is commitment, the cool component. And this is your person's decision to maintain a relationship. And so what Sternberg says is there are many different kinds of love. You could have intimacy and passion, which he calls the romantic love. You could have intimacy and commitment, which is referred to as companionate love. You can have passion and commitment, which is fatuous love. And if you are lucky enough to have all three, that's the consummate love. All right. One of the things I would love to discuss in class is the fatuous love, because I can understand you've got the passion, you've got the intimacy, but you don't feel especially committed. So romantic love makes sense. The intimacy and the commitment without the passion, that makes sense. All three, passion, intimacy, and commitment, that makes sense. But I don't understand how you could have the passion for someone and the commitment for someone, but you don't want to spend time with them. So if anyone has examples of that, I would really love to talk about this. So Sternberg says this consummate love is challenging to achieve, to maintain. And I think because of how our culture is set up to really kind of glorify that romantic love, we think that this is the way it should be all the time. And it's important to realize that is it a pendulum maybe, or it's a roller coaster, or it's not always going to be the same way all the time. And just because certain times in a relationship you don't feel like you want to spend a lot of time with that person, or you're not terribly passionate about that person, or you're not terribly committed, does not mean that the relationship is over. Okay, so we want to look at commitment and affection now. So commitment is basically the promise to remain in a relationship and make that relationship work. And that we form commitment through communication, and we reinforce commitment through communication. And I like this point that behaviors are important, but without language, commitment may not be clear. So this interesting, they say commitment is the unmarried young adults say that although they could readily identify meanings and expectations of committed romantic relationships, they hesitated to talk about those desires with the partner. I'm not really sure why. And then there's a chart on page 327 that talks about indicators of commitment. For example, I'm not going to read them all: providing affection, sharing companionship, showing respect, working on relationship problems together. These are all different ways that people can show that they are committed. All right, so the research shows that couples who regularly regularly communicate their commitment have more positive feelings about the relationship. Okay. In the West, United States, Britain, Europe, we have this belief that probably love starts with the passion and the intimacy, and it leads up to, it culminates in commitment. And in cultures that believe in and promote arranged marriages, it's commitment that comes first, that the couple has said, okay, we are in this relationship, and as they get to know each other, then maybe at that point the passion and the intimacy follows. Okay, so as the textbook says, regardless of the order, wherever commitment falls in this relationship, there is a strong relationship between commitment and communication in successful romantic relationships. Okay, so what is affection? Well, affection, we know that affection, expressing affection, whether it's verbally or non-verbally, it's typical of a romantic relationship. Probably more typical of a romantic relationship than it would be in friendships or family relationships, although maybe I don't believe that. I have to think about that a little bit more. Okay, holding hands, rubbing somebody's back, saying I love you. Okay, so there's an interesting study that they talked about that showed that couples who increased the amount of romantic kissing over 6-week periods had lower cholesterol. Their stress was lower and their cholesterol was lower. Last semester, in the recent past, I had a student who did her essay on what she did an experiment where she increased the amount of, what did she call it, non-sexual physical touch with her husband. And she thought he was going to react like, whoa, what's going on? Why are you touching me so much? And interestingly, he really didn't, he wasn't consciously aware of the difference, although he did report that he felt good. He felt that he must be doing things right around the house. Okay, so sometimes what we do is, even when we are not feeling especially affectionate towards somebody, we might give them a hug, or we might say, they say, love you, and they refer to that as deceptive affection. But don't think of it as a bad thing, because you are not, I guess this would, in a way, it's like a benevolent lie. You are doing it for the benefit of somebody else. You're not doing it to necessarily, you're not being nefarious about it. Okay. This is the one where I always feel like a little embarrassed talking about it. It's the culture in which I was raised. Definitely, sexual activity is an important way that a romantic couple expresses affection. And they say that it's most beneficial, most satisfying when people are also talking. Like, do you like this? I like that. Don't do that. It really annoys me. So it's not like it is frequently shown in the movies. Okay, so now let's look at how we can communicate effectively in romantic relationships. So Gary Chapman discovered, identified something that he calls love languages. I came up with 5 of them. I believe that this also applies, it's not just to romantic relationships, because I see this playing out with my children and also with friends. Okay, so as we go through these, or as you read them in the chapter, what I want you to do is pay attention to which are the ones that you see yourself using or valuing the most. Okay, so words of affirmation. complimenting someone, praising them, um, basically saying to the person, I value you. Could be like you put a little note in your child's lunch, uh, um, lunch bag. Okay. Another one is quality time, not just spending time together, but actually um, doing things that where you're focusing on, wow, we are spending time together. So a little sidetrack. My daughter was in first grade, and I noticed at one point that she developed Monday-itis. Like every Monday, she would tell me she was sick. And when I finally figured out what was going on, I said to her one Monday, "Okay, honey, what's going on? I know you're not sick." And she said, "I didn't get to spend any time with you this weekend." And I said, "Honey, we were together all the time." And she said, "But it wasn't quality time." So there's a little first grader. Did she know what buttons to push? Okay. Another one is gifts. And it doesn't have to be things like champagne and diamond rings. It can be small things, It could be, I don't know, flowers. I think this is my husband's. I have the most amazing collection of earrings, and the more expensive ones are ones that he bought me. Okay. Acts of service, which I think is mine, is taking out the trash, doing the laundry, making sure that there's gas in the car. It's the little things that people do to make sure that someone else's life is running smoothly. And then the last one is physical touch. I mean, it can be sex, but it can also be holding hands or scratching somebody's head. So there's a short and interesting video about love languages that looks at a couple, and they have different love languages. Okay, so when you think about this, for most of us, the love language that we show to other people, it's the one that we value most, and it's the one that we expect in return. So, there I am, cooking, making sure that clothes are washed, folded, put away, there's gas in the car, all these things. And, my husband comes home and he has earrings for me. And, I love earrings. And I say to him, I don't need earrings. I just want you to wash the dishes sometimes, which is code for, I don't think you love me because you're not speaking the same love language that I am. And he doesn't see the acts of service necessarily as a love language. He's like, you never buy me anything special. Actually, he doesn't say it. He is a man of few words. Okay, so can you see how this can cause problems? Because, I'm like, what are you trying to buy my love here? And he's saying, like, why don't you ever go out of your way to get me something nice? Okay. So the last part in this chapter has to do with how mediated communication can help or hinder a romantic relationship. So basically, and I'm going to take these a little bit out of order, if we are communicating using mediated communication, whether it's texting, emailing, posting, Snapchatting with whatever it is, this can help maintain a relationship. They are little ways. These are, in a sense, words of affirmation, ways that we can let the other person know, I'm thinking about you, I value you, even though I'm not physically with you, this is how I can stay connected. Okay. And why is this good? Well, if you are someone who maybe struggles to express yourself orally, if you take the time to put it in a text, you can take the time to create the best version of yourself and share that with the other person. However, people can overuse technology. I mean, it can be to the point where, the constant texts and emails, and the person says, are you like checking up on me? Or another overuse of technology could be every time we're together, you're not paying any attention to me because you are always on your phone. So it's, as with most things, it's a case of striking just the right balance. So one thing I noticed, remember I said my husband is a man of few words. I could send him a text which says something like, I'm having an awful day. When I got to work, I realized I had forgotten my key, so I had to find the security guard, and then I had to make sure I left my office open, and so that made me worried. And so when I get home, I'm not going to cook supper. We got to figure something out. And my husband's response is, okay. That's it. Not like, I hear you, honey, and don't worry, I'll cook dinner. Okay. So I was actually talking about this with the security guard, Mark, once, and he said, yeah, men do that. So I wonder if that's true. So some closing thoughts on romantic relationships. The textbook ends this chapter on the idea that our society has, for the most part, said to people, you need to be in some kind of a committed relationship. You need to be a member of a couple, whether you're married or you're engaged or you are just in a committed relationship. But that's changing because there are an increasing number of people who choose to remain single. And by that, I don't mean they choose not to get married or engaged, but they don't feel the need to be half of a couple. Okay. And I thought this to me was mind-boggling. Okay. So in 2016, there was an analysis of data that was taken nationally in the United States, and it found that people who were single were more likely than married people to stay in touch with, provide help to, and receive help from parents, siblings, neighbors, and friends. So the people who've chosen to remain single are satisfying their needs for intimacy, and by intimacy we are not necessarily talking sex. We're talking feeling close to somebody. They satisfy this by having close relationships with more people in their lives. So it could be this is where Dunbar came up with the 5 close relationships. Okay. So what do you remember about Sternberg's triangular theory of love? What does this mean to you? Does it help you understand certain things better? And then what are the 5 love languages that are identified by Gary Chapman, and what is your preferred love language? And I would go further, have you come into any difficulties because, and again, it doesn't have to be with a romantic partner, it could be with a family member, could be with the friend, So have you come into have you noticed any difficulties because you speak a different love language than the other person does? All right, so this was chapter 11, Communicating in Close Relationships.